The Institute of Kethforn was older than most stars. It floated in the darkness around a dead sun, a structure so large that it could be seen from 3 solar systems away. For 4.7 million years, it had done one thing and one thing only. It recorded life. Every species that had ever existed in the known universe had a file in the Institute's database. Every civilization that had risen and fallen, every creature that had learned to think and speak and dream, all of them were cataloged here. The Institute did not judge. It did not interfere. It simply watched and remembered that the Lane-9 was an alchemist. Its body was made of living crystal, and its thoughts moved like light through glass. It had served the Institute for 6,000 years, which made it young by the standards of its kind. Most of its work was boring. It checked systems. It verified data. It made sure that the great machines kept running smoothly. On this day, which seemed like any other day, Fel-9 was performing routine maintenance on the biological signature database. This was the system that tracked the unique patterns of every known species. Each form of life had its own signature, like a fingerprint made of DNA and energy, and something deeper that scientists still did not fully understand. The database had been running without error for longer than most civilizations had existed. Then, an alert appeared. The Lane-9 stopped moving. It was not a warning. It was not a notification. It was a fault. A fault was a category of error so rare that most alchemists had never seen one. Fel-9 had certainly never seen one. A fault meant that the system had detected something that should not exist. Something that broke the rules of what was possible. The readout was simple. Just 3 words and a species designation. But those words made Fel-9 feel something it had not felt in centuries. Fear. The message read, "Human signature detected." Fel-9 immediately cross-referenced the database. It pulled up the file on humanity and read it carefully. The file was old but complete. Humans had been a promising species once. They lived on a small blue planet in a quiet arm of the galaxy. They were carbon-based, warm-blooded, and highly emotional. They had developed intelligence quickly, perhaps too quickly. They learned to split atoms before they learned to share resources. They built weapons before they built bridges. The file's conclusion was marked with a simple stamp. Species concluded. The date was 2.3 million years ago. According to every record the Institute possessed, humanity had destroyed itself. Their planet had become too hot. Their wars had become too violent. Their last signals had been desperate and confused, and then there had been silence. The Institute had waited and watched for another 1,000 years, just to be sure. Then it had closed the file, concluded species did not come back. That was the one rule that had never been broken. In 4.7 million years of recording life, the Institute had watched countless civilizations rise and fall. Some had been destroyed by disaster. Some had been conquered by enemies. Some had simply faded away, growing tired and old until they chose to end themselves. But none of them, not one, had ever returned from conclusion. Yet the signature was unmistakable. Fel-9 ran the analysis 17 times. It checked for contamination, for echoes, for any possible error. There was none. The signature was not similar to human. It was not derived from human. It was human. Pure and clear and impossible. The Lane-9 knew what it had to do. It sent a message to the Directorate. The Directorate was the ruling council of the Institute. Its members were the oldest and wisest beings in the known universe. Some of them had been alive when the Institute was first built. They did not meet often. They did not need to. The universe was old and slow, and very little surprised them anymore. But this surprised them. The Directorate convened for the first time in 80,000 years. 12 beings gathered in a chamber at the heart of the Institute. They were different shapes and sizes. Some had bodies of flesh. Some had bodies of light. Some had no bodies at all, existing only as patterns of thought held together by ancient machines. But all of them were troubled. Director Primus was the oldest. It had been alive for so long that it had forgotten its original form. Now it existed as a cloud of golden particles that shifted and swirled like a slow storm. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Show us the data," Director Primus said. The Lane-9 displayed everything. The signature, the analysis, the 17 verification attempts. The director had studied the information in silence. None of them spoke for a long time. Finally, one of the directors, a being of woven shadow named Kethnol, asked the obvious question. "Where is the signature coming from?" Thel-9 hesitated. This was the part that made everything worse. "The hollow expanse," it said. The directorate did not react visibly, but Thel-9 could feel their shock. The hollow expanse was a region of space on the far edge of the galaxy. Millions of years ago, it had been home to a great civilization. Then something had happened. A war, perhaps, or a disaster beyond understanding. The entire region had been destroyed. Planets had been shattered. Stars had been poisoned. The radiation was so intense that nothing could survive there. The hollow expanse was dead. Everyone knew this. The Institute had confirmed it countless times. Nothing lived there. Nothing could live there. Yet somewhere in that dead and poisoned space, something was broadcasting a human signature. "This is impossible," said Kethnol. "The data does not lie," said Director Primus. "We must investigate. And if we find humans?" asked another director. "What then?" "The file is closed. The species is concluded. Our records say they are dead." Director Primus was quiet for a moment. The golden particles of its body swirled faster, a sign of deep thought. "Then our records are wrong," it said finally, "and we must correct them." Thel-9 felt a strange sensation moving through its crystal body. It took a moment to recognize the feeling. It was curiosity. For the first time in thousands of years, it wanted to know what would happen next. The Institute had recorded the death of humanity 2 million years ago. It had closed the file and moved on, as it always did. The universe was full of species that had failed. Humanity was just one more. But now, against all logic and reason, something human was alive in the darkness. Something had survived. And the Institute, which had watched and recorded for millions of years without ever being surprised, was about to learn that its records were not as complete as it believed. The great machines of the Institute hummed with new purpose. A ship was being prepared. An expedition was being planned. And somewhere in the hollow expanse, in a region of space where nothing should exist, a signal continued to broadcast. The humans were not as dead as everyone thought. The research vessel Certainty of Records was one of the finest ships ever built. It carried scientists from 7 different species, each one chosen for their expertise and their open minds. The journey to the hollow expanse would take 3 weeks through fold space, and the crew used that time to prepare themselves for what they might find. Veth-Sam was the lead researcher. It was a Morkai, a species whose bodies were made of flowing liquid held together by a thin membrane. When Veth-Sam moved, it looked like water walking. When it thought deeply, its body turned darker colors. Right now, as it studied the human file for the 100th time, its body was almost black. The file told a familiar story. Veth-Sam had seen it many times before with other species. Humanity had followed a standard rise and fall pattern. They developed intelligence. They built cities. They discovered science. They split the atom. Then they started fighting. The records showed that humans were remarkably good at war. They invented new weapons faster than any species the Institute had ever recorded. They could turn almost anything into a tool for killing. But they were not very good at peace. They fought over land. They fought over resources. They fought over ideas. Sometimes they fought for no reason at all. The final entries in the file were sad to read. Earth, the human homeworld, had become too hot. The ice at the poles had melted. The oceans had risen. Crops had failed. Billions of humans had died from hunger and disease. The survivors had fought over what remained, using the terrible weapons they had built. The last signals from Earth showed cities burning and people screaming. Then silence. The Institute had waited and watched. It sent probes to the human system. It found a poisoned planet and empty space stations. It found bones and ruins in silence. After 1,000 years of nothing, it had marked the file concluded and moved on. "A standard collapse," said Vethsan to the assembled crew. They were not exceptional. They simply ran out of time. "Then, how do you explain the signature?" asked Krill 7, an insectoid scientist with 17 eyes. "Dead species do not broadcast. That is what we are here to find out," said Vethsan. "There are several possibilities. Perhaps another species found human genetic material and cloned them. Perhaps a rogue AI is using human templates for some purpose. Perhaps the signature is simply an echo, a ghost in the system." No one mentioned the fourth possibility. No one wanted to say it out loud. But everyone was thinking the same thing. What if the humans had survived? The ship exited fold space at the edge of the hollow expanse. Through the viewing ports, the crew could see exactly what they expected. Nothing. The expanse was a graveyard. Shattered planets floated in the darkness like broken toys. Dead stars gave off weak radiation. Dust and debris filled the space between. The remains of whatever catastrophe had destroyed this region millions of years ago. "Sensors show nothing," reported the navigation officer. "No life signs. No energy signatures. No artificial structures." Vethsam's body shifted to a lighter shade. Perhaps this was all a mistake after all. Perhaps the human signature had been an error, and they had traveled all this way for nothing. Then Krill 7 spoke. "Wait, I am adjusting the sensor frequency. There is something strange about the debris patterns." "What do you mean?" asked Vethsan. "The asteroids," said Krill 7. "They are too regular, too evenly spaced, and some of them are hollow." The crew adjusted their sensors. Slowly, impossibly, the truth became clear. What they had thought was natural debris was not natural at all. The asteroids were artificial. They were habitats built to look like rocks. The dust clouds were not dust. They were sensor screens designed to hide what was behind them. "By the ancient records," whispered Vethsan, "there is a civilization here." The more they looked, the more they found. Thousands of hidden structures. Millions of energy signatures that had been masked to look like background radiation. Communication traffic that had been encrypted so well that it appeared to be nothing at all. An entire civilization, hidden in plain sight in a region of space that everyone believed was dead. Then the transmission came. It was audio only. BROADCAST on an old frequency that most species had stopped using millions of years ago. The voice that spoke was strange and warm. And it used a language that made every translator on the ship flash the same alert. TERRN Standard English. Archaic. "Unidentified vessel," the voice said. "You have entered protected space. State your intentions or withdraw." Vethsam's body went completely pale. It had studied dead languages as part of its training. It knew what it was hearing. This was human speech. Not a recording. Not a simulation. A living human was speaking to them. "This is the research vessel's certainty of records," Vethsam replied, trying to keep its voice steady. We are scientists from the Institute of Kethvorin. We detected an anomalous signature and came to investigate." There was a pause. Then the voice laughed. It was a strange sound, full of genuine warmth and amusement. Bethsam had heard recordings of human laughter before, but they had always seemed sad, trapped in the past. This laughter was alive. "The Institute," the voice said. "We remember the Institute. You came to watch us die, didn't you? You recorded everything. Our wars, our famines, our final days. Then you closed your file and moved on." Bethsam did not know what to say. The voice was not angry. It was simply stating facts. "That was 2 million years ago," the voice continued. "You're a little late for our funeral. But since you came all this way, you might as well come in. I think you'll find that the dead are not as dead as you believed." A path appeared on the navigation screens. A route through the debris field and the sensor screens, leading deeper into the hollow expanse. At the end of the path was a structure that had been completely hidden until now. It was built into a hollowed-out planetoid, and it was enormous. What should we do? Ask Curl-7.ve to Sam stared at the screens. Everything it had been taught said this was impossible. Concluded species did not return. The Institute's records did not make mistakes. Yet here was proof that both of those beliefs were wrong. "We follow the path," said Vethsan. "We are scientists. We came to find the truth. And I think the truth is going to be more interesting than anything in our files." The certainty of records moved forward into the hidden heart of the hollow expanse. Behind it, the sensor screens closed again, hiding everything from outside view. Ahead, lights began to appear on the planetoid structure. Someone was welcoming them home. The humans had not just survived. They had been waiting. The station was called Anchorage. It had been carved into the heart of a dead planetoid, and it was larger than some cities the expedition had seen on living worlds. Lights glowed in the docking bay as the certainty of records settled onto the landing platform. Through the viewing ports, the crew could see figures waiting for them. Human figures. Vethsan led the expedition out of the ship. Its liquid body trembled slightly, a sign of nervousness that it could not hide. Behind it came Krill-7 and 5 other scientists, each one staring at the impossible sight before them. The humans looked exactly like the images in the Institute's files. 2 arms, 2 legs, soft skin and warm blood. They wore simple clothing and dark colors, and they watched the aliens approach with calm, patient eyes. None of them seemed afraid. None of them seemed surprised that one human stepped forward. She was tall, with dark skin and gray hair cut short against her skull. Her eyes were the color of deep water, and when she smiled, it transformed her whole face. "Welcome to Anchorage," she said. "My name is Kasha. I suppose you have questions." Vethsan had thousands of questions. It did not know where to start. "You are human," it said finally. "The Institute recorded your extinction 2 million years ago. How is this possible?" Kasha nodded slowly. "Walk with me," she said. "I will show you." She led them through the station. The corridors were wide and clean, filled with soft light and the quiet hum of machinery. Other humans passed them, going about their daily work. Some nodded politely at the aliens. Most simply continued on their way, as if visitors from the Institute were not remarkable at all. "The Institute was not wrong," Kasha said as they walked. "Humanity did collapse. Earth did become uninhabitable. Our wars did destroy most of our civilization. Everything your records say is true. Then how are you here?" asked Krill-7. "Because not everyone died," said Kasha. "When the end came, most humans stayed and fought over the scraps. They were too angry, too proud, too stubborn to do anything else. But some of us made a different choice. 17 ships, 40,000 people, We took what we could carry, and we ran. She stopped at a large window that looked out into the darkness of space. In the distance, the crew could see other structures, other lights, other signs of life hidden among the dead rocks. We came here, Kasha continued, to the hollow expanse, a region so destroyed that no one would follow, a graveyard so complete that no one would look. We hid in the darkness, and we began again. Veth Som's body shifted through several colors as it processed this information. 2 million years, it said. You have been hiding for 2 million years. Yes, that is impossible. Species do not develop in isolation for that long. You should have stagnated. You should have declined. The patterns are clear. Kasha smiled again. It was a sad smile this time, full of old memories. The patterns you have seen are from species that had something to go back to. We had nothing. Earth was gone. Our colonies were gone. Our history, our monuments, our graves, all of it was ash and poison. The only thing we had was each other and the knowledge of what we had done wrong. She began walking again, leading them deeper into the station. We learned, Veth Som. That is what humans do when we have no other choice. We learned from every mistake that had killed us. We learned patience. We learned cooperation. We learned that survival is more important than pride. They entered a large chamber filled with screens and displays. Images flickered across them, showing the history of the remnant. The early years of desperation and fear. The slow building of new homes in the darkness. Generations born and raised in hiding, taught to remember the past but not repeat it. It took us 500 years just to stabilize, said Kasha. Another 1,000 to start growing. We made mistakes. We almost destroyed ourselves twice more. But each time, we remembered why we were here. We remembered what we had lost. And we chose to be better. Why did you hide? Asked Veth Som. Once you had rebuilt, why not rejoin the galaxy? Why not announce yourselves? Kasha turned to face the alien directly. Her eyes were calm but intense. Because we were not ready. And because the galaxy was not ready for us. What do you mean? The Institute watched us die, said Kasha. It recorded our collapse and closed the file. It did not help. It did not intervene. That is what the galaxy does. It watches. It records. It lets species rise and fall without interference. She gestured at the screens around them. We chose differently. Look, the screens changed. They showed worlds that Veth Som recognized. Alien civilizations that the Institute had recorded over the past 2 million years. But the images showed things that were not in any file. Medical supplies appearing mysteriously on plague-struck planets. Asteroids deflecting slightly from collision courses. Crop solutions delivered anonymously to starving populations. You have been helping them, said Veth Som. Secretly. We remembered what it felt like to be alone and dying, said Kasha. We could not save ourselves in time, but we could save others. So we did, quietly, without asking for thanks, without revealing ourselves. Quill 7 stepped forward. Its 17 eyes were blinking rapidly. This is unprecedented. No species in the Institute's records has ever done this. Hidden development, secret intervention, 2 million years of patience. It defies every model we have. Perhaps your models are incomplete, said Kasha. She led them to one final viewing deck. The blast shields covering the window began to retract. You asked why we chose to reveal ourselves now, after all this time. It is because we have finally finished what we started. And because something is coming that we cannot face alone. The shields opened completely. The expedition stood in stunned silence. Outside the window, filling the entire view, was a structure beyond anything the Institute had ever recorded. It was a ring around a star. A complete ring, millions of kilometers in diameter, capturing all the energy of the sun it circled. And it was not the only one. In the distance, they could see others being built. A civilization on a scale that made even the Institute look small. "We did not hide because we were weak," said Kasha. "We hid because we were growing. And now we are ready." Vethsam could not speak. Nothing in its training, nothing in millions of years of Institute records had prepared it for this. Humanity had not simply survived. Humanity had become something new. Something that had never existed before. And now, after 2 million years of patience, they were stepping out of the shadows. The directorate chamber had never been so full. Every archivist who could attend was present, their varied forms filling the ancient space with light and shadow and shapes that had no name. The expedition's report had been delivered. Now the directorate had to decide what it meant. Director Primus floated at the center of the chamber, its golden particles swirling in patterns that showed deep disturbance. Around it, the other directors debated in voices that ranged from whispers to thunder. "The facts are undeniable," said Director Primus. Humanity survived extinction. They developed in complete isolation for 2 million years. Their current technological capabilities exceed anything we have recorded. "A Dyson swarm," said Kethnal, the Shadow Director. "Multiple Dyson swarms. Energy capture on a stellar scale. They could power civilizations that do not yet exist. And they're faster than light technology," added another director. "Our scientists cannot even understand the principles. It operates on methods we have never seen." "They have solved biological mortality," said Thelnine, who had been allowed into the chamber as the original discoverer of the anomaly. "Their oldest citizens are more than 500,000 years old. They remember the flight from Earth." The chamber fell silent at this. Immortality was not unknown in the galaxy. The directors themselves had found ways to extend their existence far beyond natural limits. But humanity had achieved it completely for their entire population, using technology that seemed almost simple compared to the complex machines that kept the directors alive. "This is not the most troubling discovery," said Director Primus. "Show them the other data." Thelnine activated the display. Images appeared in the air above the assembly. They showed the secret interventions that Kasha had revealed to the expedition. Medical supplies delivered to dying worlds. Asteroids redirected from populated planets. Food solutions that had saved billions of lives over millions of years. "They have been watching us," said Director Primus. "For as long as we have been recording, they have been observing. They know everything about us. Our methods, our policies, our choice to never interfere. And they chose differently," said Kethnal. "They helped. Secretly, without recognition, without reward. Why? Because they remembered what it was like to die alone," said Vethsan, speaking for the first time. "I spoke with their representative. She said they could not save themselves in time, but they could save others. So they did." The directorate processed this in silence. For millions of years, the Institute had operated on one principle. It watched. It recorded. It did not interfere. This was not cruelty. It was simply the way things were done. Species rose and fell. That was the natural order. The Institute's job was to remember, not to change. But humanity had looked at that natural order and decided it was not good enough. "There is more," said Director Primus. "The humans have revealed themselves now for a reason. They sent us a message." The display changed. It showed a transmission that had arrived shortly after the expedition returned. A human voice spoke, calm and clear, to the Institute of Kethforn and the civilizations of the known galaxy. "We are the remnant of humanity. For 2 million years, we have lived in silence, watching and helping where we could. We have revealed ourselves now because something is coming, something we cannot face alone. We believe you will want to see this for yourselves." The message ended with coordinates. Long-range sensors at those coordinates showed something that made even the oldest directors feel cold. At the edge of the galaxy, something was moving. Something vast. Something that had been sleeping for longer than the Institute had existed. "What is it?" asked Elaine-9. Director Primus took a long time to answer. When it spoke, its voice was heavy with ages of memory. "We do not know its true name. We call it the Absence. It existed before the Institute, before any civilization we have recorded. It destroyed the original inhabitants of the hollow expanse. That is why that region is dead." "What does it do?" asked Vethsan. "It consumes. Not matter, not energy. Something worse. It consumes order, information, meaning. When the Absence passes through a region of space, everything that was there becomes nothing. Not destroyed, not killed. Simply gone. As if it had never existed at all." The chamber erupted in noise. Directors spoke over each other, their voices mixing into chaos. Some demanded action. Some demanded withdrawal. Some simply sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they were hearing. "Why has it awakened now?" someone asked. "It sleeps for eons," said Director Primus. "Then it wakes and feeds. The cycle is longer than our records. We only know of it because we found fragments of information left by civilizations that came before us. They warned of the Absence. They told us it could not be fought. They told us it could not be stopped. Then what do?" asked Cathnall. "If it cannot be stopped, what is the point of knowing?" Another transmission arrived. Another human voice, speaking with the same calm patience that Kasha had shown. "We know you are afraid. We were afraid too when we first learned of the Absence. We have spent 1,000,000 years studying it, preparing for it, trying to understand it. We believe there is a way to survive, but it will require something that has never happened before. It will require every species in the galaxy to work together. Not as observers, not as record keepers, as participants." Director Primus was silent for a long moment. The golden particles of its body swirled in complex patterns, processing thoughts that had accumulated over millions of years. "The humans are asking us to change," it said finally. "They are asking us to stop watching and start doing." "The Institute has never participated," said Cathnall. "It is not our way." "Perhaps our way is not enough," said Vethsan. "Perhaps it never was." The debate continued for hours. Arguments were made and rejected. Old principles were questioned for the first time in ages. And slowly, reluctantly, the Directorate began to realize that the universe had changed around them. While they had been busy recording it, the humans had not just survived extinction. They had learned from it. They had grown. And now they were offering the galaxy something it had never had before. A chance to face the darkness together. The question was whether the galaxy would accept Dot as the Directorate debated. Sensors at the edge of known space continued to track the Absence. It was moving slowly, but it was moving. Stars in its path began to flicker. Worlds began to lose coherence. The ancient hunger was awakening Dot, and somewhere in the hollow expanse, humanity waited. They had been preparing for this moment for 2,000,000 years. They had built their ships. They had developed their technology. They had learned patience and cooperation and hoped now they needed the galaxy to learn the same things. And they were running out of time. The flagship Remember Earth hung at the edge of known space, surrounded by the largest fleet ever assembled. Ships from 1,000 different species filled the darkness, their lights making new constellations against the void. They had come because the humans had called them. They had come because they were afraid. And they had come because, for the first time in galactic history, someone had offered them hope. Kasia stood on the bridge, watching the stars. She was old now, older than mountains, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still clear. Behind her, human officers worked alongside aliens from dozens of worlds. The cooperation was imperfect. There were arguments and misunderstandings and moments of fear, but they were working together, and that was more than anyone had expected. The absence was visible now, not as a shape, but as an emptiness. Stars disappeared when it passed. Entire systems simply stopped existing, leaving holes in the fabric of space where there should have been light. It moved slowly, but it moved without stopping, and it was coming this way. "Our weapons are ready," said Admiral Chun, standing beside Kasia. "Every species has contributed their most powerful technology. We can hit the absence with more force than has ever been concentrated in one place." "It will not work," said Kasia. Chun nodded. He had known this already. They all had. The studies were clear. The absence did not interact with matter the way normal things did. Energy weapons passed through it. Physical projectiles dissolved. Nuclear fire meant nothing to something that consumed meaning itself. "Then what is the plan?" asked Thel-9, who had joined the fleet as the Institute's official observer. "Why gather all these forces if we cannot fight?" Kasia turned to face the crystal being. "We are not here to fight. We are here to speak." She explained the plan that humanity had developed over 1,000,000 years of preparation. The absence consumed information. It fed on order and structure and meaning. Every weapon, every defense, every wall that had ever been raised against it was simply more food. But humanity had discovered something in their long study of the ancient records. The absence had never encountered information that could not be consumed. It had never met meaning that refused to be destroyed. Every civilization it had faced had tried to fight or flee. None of them had tried something different. "We are going to give it what it wants," said Kasia. "We are going to feed it. But we are going to feed it something it cannot digest." The plan required every species to contribute something precious. Not weapons, not technology, stories, histories, meanings. Every civilization would add their records to a combined archive, encoded in a format that humanity had developed. A format that reconstructed itself, that grew stronger under entropy. That could not be diminished because it carried the weight of 1,000,000,000 years of sapient life. "You want us to share our records," said Thel-9. "The Institute has never done this. Our archives are sacred." "Your archives will be erased if the absence reaches them," said Kasia. "Everything you have recorded for 4.7 million years will be gone. Not destroyed, not forgotten. Simply never existed." "Is that what you want?" Thel-9 did not answer, but it transmitted the request to the Directorate, and the Directorate began to debate. The discussion lasted for 3 days. Time they did not have. The absence drew closer, and with each hour, more stars vanished from the sky. More worlds ceased to exist. More histories were erased. On the 3rd day, Director Primus made its decision. The Institute was created to remember, it said, broadcasting to the entire fleet. For millions of years, we have watched civilizations rise and fall. We have recorded their triumphs and their failures. We have kept their memories safe. But we have never shared them. We have never participated in the living galaxy. We have only observed. The golden particles of Director Primus's body pulsed with ancient light. The humans have shown us another way. They remembered their own death, and they used that memory to help others live. They did not just record history. They shaped it. Perhaps it is time for us to do the same. The Institute's archives opened. 4.7 million years of records flowed into the combined archive. Every species that have ever existed. Every story that have ever been told. Every small triumph and quiet kindness and desperate hope that sapient beings had created. Since the beginning of recorded time, other civilizations followed. The Morke added their fluid philosophies. The insectoid krill contributed their vast scientific knowledge. Species that had been enemies for millennia shared their histories with each other, adding their meanings to the growing whole. Kasha watched the archive grow. It was beautiful, a tapestry of existence woven from a billion different threads. And at its heart was something new, something that had never existed before, a story that belonged to everyone. The absence arrived, it came like a wave of nothing, swallowing light and matter and meaning as it moved. Ships at the edge of the fleet began to dissolve. Sensors failed. Communications died. For a terrible moment, it seemed like all their preparation had been for nothing. Then humanity activated the archive. It broadcast outward in all directions, filling space with information, stories and histories and meanings, singing out in a format that rebuilt itself faster than it could be consumed. The absence tried to feed. It took in the archive, swallowing data as it always had, but the data did not disappear. It reconstructed. It grew. It multiplied. For every piece of meaning the absence consumed, two more appeared in its place. The archive was not just information. It was living memory, carrying the weight of 1 billion years of existence. Refusing to be forgotten, the absence stopped. For the first time in its ancient existence, it had encountered something it could not diminish. It hung in space, neither advancing nor retreating, processing something it had never experienced before. It had come to feed, and instead, it had been fed something that filled it without satisfying it. Then, slowly, it began to withdraw. It did not die. It did not flee. It simply moved away, drifting back toward the darkness between galaxies. Perhaps it was satisfied. Perhaps it was confused. Perhaps it had found something in the archive that interested it more than destruction. No one would ever know for certain, but it was leaving. And the galaxy was still there. The fleet erupted in celebration. Species that had never spoken to each other embraced. Enemies became allies. The impossible had happened. They had survived. Kasha watched the stars return, one by one, as the absence moved away. Beside her, Fel 9 glowed with colors it had never shown before. "The Institute will need to update its records," said the crystal being. "The human file is severely incomplete." Kasha laughed. It was the same warm laugh that had greeted the expedition so many weeks ago. "Then perhaps you should ask us to help fill in the gaps." The final entry in the corrected human file was written by Director Primus itself. It read, "Species, human, status, active, classification, persistent, notes, first recorded species to survive self-induced extinction, first to develop in complete isolation and emerge stronger, first to offer help to the galaxy without asking for recognition or reward, first to request the Institute's participation rather than its observation. Addendum: when the end came for humanity, they did not accept it. They ran, they hid, they rebuilt, and they returned. They remembered their own death, and they used that memory to help others live. They spent 2 million years preparing to save a galaxy that had written them off as failures. They remembered us before we remembered them. Perhaps that is the most human thing of all. The Remember Earth turned away from the fading absence and set course for home. Behind it, the combined fleet followed, carrying species that had learned to work together for the first time. The archive they had built remained, broadcasting its eternal song into the darkness. And somewhere in the hollow expanse, the remnant of humanity finally stepped out of the shadows. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, just as neighbors, ready at last to stop hiding and start living among the stars they had watched for so long. The records had been corrected. Humanity was not dead. They had just been waiting for the right moment to come home.